It was a Saturday morning at Red Oak Park, the kind of morning where the world felt quiet and slow, like time itself had decided to take a breath. Golden sunlight filtered through the ancient oak trees that gave the park its name, their branches swaying gently in the warm breeze. The air smelled of fresh-cut grass and wildflowers, mixed with the faint aroma of coffee and pastries from the vendor cart near the playground. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Families spread colorful picnic blankets on the grass. Children laughed and shrieked as they chased each other around the swing sets. An elderly couple walked hand in hand along the winding path that circled the pond, where ducks paddled lazily in the morning sun. Dogs barked. Frisbees flew. The world seemed peaceful, ordinary, safe. Near the edge of the park, away from the families and the noise, parked in a neat line under the shade of the oldest oak trees, sat 6 motorcycles. Not the flashy sport bikes you see weaving through traffic, but heavy, powerful machines, Harley-Davidsons mostly, with chrome that gleamed like mirrors in the dappled sunlight. Black leather jackets were draped carefully over seats. Helmets rested on handlebars. The bikes sat silent now, but anyone who knew anything about motorcycles could tell these weren't just machines. They were statements, declarations of freedom, brotherhood, and a life lived on your own terms. The Steel Ridge Brotherhood. They'd been riding together for 15 years, through storms and sunshine, through loss and celebration, through the kind of bond that most people never experience in a lifetime. Marcus Hawk Daniels stood leaning against his bike, a custom black and silver Road King that he'd rebuilt himself over the course of 3 winters. He was a man in his late 50s, tall and lean, with broad shoulders that still carried the posture of the Marine he'd been 30 years ago. Silver streaked through his dark beard, and the hair he kept tied back in a short ponytail. His face was weathered, lined with the kind of marks that come from years spent outdoors, under the sun, in the wind. But it was his eyes that people noticed most, dark brown, sharp, and carrying the weight of someone who'd seen too much, lost too much, and somehow kept going anyway. He sipped black coffee from a paper cup, his gaze distant, watching the families across the park with an expression that was hard to read. Beside him stood Dutch Reynolds, a bear of a man who stood 6'4" and weighed close to 250, most of it muscle earned from years working construction before his back gave out. He had a shaved head, a thick gray beard, and arms covered in tattoos that told stories of 30 years on the road. Despite his intimidating appearance, Dutch had the gentlest hands Marcus had ever seen, the kind of man who could rebuild an engine with precision or hold a crying child with infinite patience. Colt Morrison sat on his bike, a silent figure in black jeans and a worn leather vest, his dark eyes scanning the park with the same watchful intensity he'd carried since his days as a military police officer. He rarely spoke unless he had something important to say, but when he did, people listened. At 42, he was the club's road captain, the one who planned their routes, kept them safe, and never missed a detail. Reese Malloy, the youngest of the group at barely 30, leaned against his bike with a paper bag of donuts, trying to convince Dutch to take one. Reese had joined the Brotherhood 5 years ago, fresh out of a bad divorce and a worse job, looking for something real. He'd found it here, with these men, on these roads. They were talking about nothing important. The weather, how it was supposed to hit 90 by afternoon. The road ahead, whether they should take the scenic route through the mountains or stick to the highway. The diner they'd hit for lunch, whether Maggie's still made the best burger in 3 counties. It was easy conversation, comfortable, the kind that flows between men who know each other so well that silence is never awkward. And then they heard it, a child's voice, desperate, terrified, cutting through the peaceful morning like a knife. "Please, somebody help, please." Every head turned, every conversation stopped. The world seemed to freeze for just a heartbeat, and then they saw him. A little boy, no older than 8, came sprinting across the park. He was small, thin, wearing a faded Spider-Man t-shirt and jeans with holes in the knees. His sneakers too big for his feet, probably hand-me-downs, kicked up dust as he ran, his arms pumping frantically. His face was streaked with tears, his breath coming in ragged, desperate gasps. His eyes were wild with terror, scanning the park frantically. He wasn't running toward the families on the grass. He wasn't running toward the playground where other children played. He wasn't even running toward the park ranger station near the entrance. He was running straight toward the bikers. Marcus straightened immediately, his coffee cup forgotten in his hand. Dutch took a step forward. Colt was already off his bike. The boy's legs were shaking, his lungs screaming, but he didn't stop. He ran like his life depended on it, like someone's life depended on it. And when he reached them, stumbling to a stop in front of Marcus, he collapsed to his knees, sobbing so hard his entire body shook. CTA insert engagement hook. Before we continue, if you believe that true strength means protecting those who can't protect themselves, if you believe in second chances and the power of good hearts to change someone's fate, please like, comment, and share this video. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because stories like this remind us that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear leather and ride steel. And sometimes they're the last people you'd expect. Marcus dropped to one knee immediately, setting his coffee cup on the ground. His rough, calloused hands that had held rifles, built engines, and buried friends settled gently on the boy's trembling shoulders. Hey, easy, son. Slow down. Take a breath. The boy looked up, his face red and soaked with tears, his eyes filled with a terror that no child should ever have to feel. He tried to speak, but the words came out in broken, gasping sobs. They're hurting Grandma, please. Dutch moved forward, kneeling beside Marcus, his massive frame somehow radiating calm despite his intimidating size. He pulled a clean handkerchief from his pocket, the one his late wife had embroidered with his initials 20 years ago, and gently wiped the boy's face. It's okay, kid. You're safe now. We're gonna help, but we need you to tell us what happened. Can you do that? The boy nodded frantically, hiccuping between words. There's these men at our house. They came this morning. They were yelling at Grandma, saying we have to leave, that we don't belong there anymore. Marcus exchanged a quick glance with Dutch. Already, alarm bells were ringing. Where's your mom and dad? Colt asked quietly, stepping closer. The boy's face crumpled. They died 2 years ago. Car accident. It's just me and Grandma now. Marcus felt something twist in his chest. He'd heard too many stories like this. Good people, dealt bad hands, left to survive on their own. Okay, Marcus said gently. What happened this morning? With the men? The boy's hands were shaking as he spoke. Grandma told them to leave. She said, we paid our bills, and they had no right to be there. But they wouldn't leave. They kept yelling. And then, one of them, the younger one, he pushed her. Dutch's jaw clenched visibly. She fell down. The boy continued, his voice breaking. She hit her head on the porch railing. There was blood. She was crying and trying to get up, but they wouldn't help her. They just kept yelling. They said if she doesn't pay them more money, they're going to throw all our stuff out. They said they're going to take me away from her. Tears poured down his face. I got scared. I didn't know what to do. Grandma told me to run and get help. So I ran. I ran as fast as I could. But nobody would help me. Marcus's voice was steady, but there was steel beneath it. What do you mean, nobody would help? The boy wiped his nose with the back of his hand. I saw a man near the parking lot. I asked him to help, but he said he didn't want to get involved. Then I saw a lady with a stroller, and she just walked away really fast when I tried to talk to her. Like she was scared of me. Reese cursed under his breath. And then, I heard the motorcycles, the boy continued, looking up at Marcus with desperate hope. And I thought maybe you could help. Please, you have to come. They're still there. They said they're going to take everything. I don't want to lose Grandma. She's all I have. Marcus stood slowly, his expression unreadable, but his eyes burned with something cold and dangerous. Something that every one of his brothers recognized. Dutch stood too, cracking his knuckles, a habit he'd had since his boxing days. Cole was already pulling out his phone, his fingers moving quickly across the screen. Reese knelt down in front of the boy, his voice gentle. What's your name, buddy? Toby. The boy whispered. Okay, Toby. That's a good name. Strong name. Listen to me, you did exactly the right thing. You were brave. You ran for help. You didn't give up. Your grandma would be proud of you. Toby's bottom lip trembled. Are you really gonna help? Marcus looked down at the boy, and for a moment, he saw another face. Another child. His nephew, Danny, 15 years ago, the night his sister's boyfriend put her in the hospital. Danny had been the same age as Toby. Same scared eyes. Same desperate plea for help. Marcus had been on the road that night. 3 states away. He'd gotten the call too late. His sister survived, but she was never the same. And Danny had carried that trauma for years, until he finally couldn't carry it anymore. Marcus had buried him on a Tuesday morning in the rain, and he'd sworn on that grave that he would never be too late again. Not for anyone. Marcus placed a hand on Toby's shoulder, his voice quiet but absolute. Yeah, kid. We're gonna help. Where do you live? Toby pointed down the street with a shaking hand. Maple Street. The blue house. Number 17. Please hurry. I don't know if Grandma's okay. Marcus looked at his brothers. No words were needed. They'd ridden together long enough that communication happened in glances, in nods, in the tightening of jaws and the straightening of shoulders. Dutch nodded once. Let's move. Cole pocketed his phone. I'm ready. Reese stood, his easy smile replaced with something harder. Let's go get her. Marcus pulled his leather jacket off the bike and shrugged it on. The worn leather settled across his shoulders like armor, like a second skin. Toby, Marcus said, you're gonna ride with Reese. Hold on tight, okay? We're gonna take you back to your grandma. Toby's eyes went wide. On a motorcycle? Reese grinned, some of his usual warmth returning. That's right, little man. Ever been on one before? Toby shook his head, a flicker of excitement breaking through the fear. Well, today's your lucky day. Reese helped him up onto the back of his bike, showing him where to hold on. You just wrap your arms around my waist and don't let go. Got it? Got it, Toby whispered. Marcus swung his leg over his bike, the familiar weight settling beneath him. He turned the key. The engine rumbled to life, a deep, throaty growl that vibrated through his chest. One by one, the other engines roared. For motorcycles. For men. One mission. Marcus looked back at Toby, who was clinging to Reese's back, his face a mixture of fear and hope. Hold on, Marcus said, and they rode. The ride to Maple Street took less than 3 minutes, but every second felt like an eternity. Marcus led the formation, his bike cutting through the morning air like a blade. Behind him, Dutch rode steady and strong. Colt flanked the right, his eyes constantly scanning. Reese brought up the rear, Toby's small arms wrapped tight around his waist. They didn't speed, didn't weave recklessly through traffic. The Steel Ridge Brotherhood never rode like idiots. Marcus had made that a rule on day one. They rode with purpose, with control, with the kind of presence that made other drivers instinctively move aside. As they turned onto Maple Street, Marcus's jaw tightened. It was a quiet neighborhood, the kind that had seen better days. The houses were small, most of them built in the 50s or 60s, simple ranch-style homes with small yards and chain-link fences. Some were well-maintained, with fresh paint and manicured lawns. Others had fallen into disrepair, with sagging porches and overgrown weeds. Number 17 was somewhere in between. A small house with peeling blue paint, the color faded by years of sun and rain. The roof needed work. Marcus could see missing shingles from the street. The front yard was tidy but sparse, just a patch of grass and a single tree that provided shade over a weathered porch. But it wasn't the house that made Marcus's blood run cold. It was the scene on the porch. The front door was wide open, hanging slightly crooked on its hinges as if it had been forced. A cardboard box lay overturned on the walkway, clothes and picture frames scattered across the concrete. A small ceramic planter, the kind grandmothers fill with petunias, lay shattered on the steps, dirt spread across the wood like a wound. And there, slumped against the porch railing, was an elderly woman. She was small and frail, maybe 75, wearing a floral house dress that had seen too many washings. Her gray hair was pulled back in a loose bun, strands falling across her face. Blood trickled from a cut above her left eyebrow, running down her temple and staining her collar. She clutched her right arm against her chest, her face twisted in pain. Standing over her were two men. The first was older, maybe in his 50s, wearing a cheap gray suit that didn't quite fit. He had thinning hair slicked back with too much gel and a face that looked like it had spent too many years frowning. He held a clipboard, jabbing at it with his finger as he yelled. The second man was younger, mid-30s, with slick-back dark hair and a sharp suit that tried too hard to look expensive. He had the kind of face that wore cruelty easily, a thin smile, cold eyes, and a posture that said he enjoyed what he was doing. "You got 72 hours, old woman," the younger man shouted, his voice carrying across the quiet street. "That's the law. You don't pay, you don't stay. Simple as that." The older man kicked over another planter, sending it crashing down the steps. Dirt exploded across the porch. "And if you keep making this difficult," the younger man sneered, leaning down close to the grandmother's face, "we'll make sure Child Protective Services knows you're unfit to take care of that brat. We'll have him in foster care by Monday." The grandmother tried to stand, her hands trembling as she pushed against the railing. But her legs buckled. She fell back, gasping, a fresh wave of pain crossing her face. The younger man laughed. Actually laughed. That's when the engines cut. 4 motorcycles rolled to a stop in front of the house. The sudden silence was deafening. 4 men dismounted in perfect unison. Boots hit pavement with deliberate purpose. Leather creaked. Helmets came off, and the air itself seemed to shift. Marcus walked forward slowly, his hands loose at his sides, his eyes locked on the 2 men. He didn't hurry, didn't shout, didn't need to. His presence alone was enough. Dutch fell into step beside him, his massive frame casting a long shadow across the lawn. Colt moved around to the side, his phone already out, camera recording. Reese helped Toby off the bike, keeping the boy behind him protectively. The younger man on the porch turned, annoyed, ready to snap at whoever dared interrupt. But the words died in his throat when he saw them. 4 bikers, leather and denim, tattoos and scars, eyes that had seen combat, loss, and the worst humanity had to offer. The older man with the clipboard paled visibly, his hand tightening on his papers. Marcus didn't stop walking. He climbed the porch steps slowly, deliberately, each footfall heavy and measured. The wooden boards creaked under his weight. When he reached the top, he was standing between the 2 men and the grandmother. He was close enough now that they could see his face clearly, the lines around his eyes, the gray in his beard, the absolute calm in his expression. And somehow, that calm was more terrifying than any anger could have been. "Funny," Marcus said quietly, his voice low and gravelly. "I was about to say the same thing to you." For a long moment, nobody moved. The younger man recovered first, puffing out his chest in a pathetic attempt to appear tough. He was maybe 5 to 10, slim build, probably spent more time at the gym taking selfies than actually working out. The kind of guy who thought an expensive suit made him powerful. "Listen, old man," he said, his voice dripping with false confidence. "This is legal business. Private property matter. You need to leave before I call the cops." Marcus didn't blink, didn't move, just stared at him with those dark, unwavering eyes. "By all means," Marcus said calmly. "Call them." The younger man hesitated, thrown off by the response. Dutch stepped forward, moving around Marcus to kneel beside the grandmother. Up close, the injuries looked worse. The cut on her forehead was still bleeding. Her right wrist was swelling, possibly sprained or broken from the fall. Her dress was torn at the shoulder. "Ma'am," Dutch said gently, his deep voice soft as velvet. "My name's Dutch. Can you tell me where you're hurt?" The grandmother looked up at him, her eyes filled with tears and confusion. "On my arm. I think I sprained it when I fell. In my head." "Don't move too much," Dutch said. He pulled a clean bandana from his pocket and pressed it gently against her forehead. "Just sit still for me, okay? We're going to take care of this." The older man with the clipboard finally found his voice. "Now, wait, just a minute. You can't. This is a legal eviction notice. We have every right to be here. Mrs. Chen here has failed to pay the increased property taxes for 3 consecutive months. The county authorized you to push an elderly woman down and leave her bleeding?" Colt's voice cut through from the side, quiet but sharp as a knife. The men turned to find him standing near the porch railing. Phone held up, red recording light clearly visible. "I've been recording since we arrived," Colt said flatly. "Got real clear footage of her sitting here injured while you two stood over her yelling. That gonna look good in court?" The younger man's face flushed red. "She fell. That's not our fault. She lost her balance, and, Toby," Marcus called out calmly, not taking his eyes off the men. "Come here, son." Toby stepped forward from behind Reese, his face streaked with dried tears. "Tell me again what you saw," Marcus said, "before you ran to get us." Toby's voice shook, but he spoke clearly. "The man in the black suit, the younger one, he pushed Grandma. She told him to leave, and he got mad and pushed her. She fell backwards and hit her head on the railing. Then they just kept yelling at her while she was bleeding." The younger man's face went from red to white. That's not the kid's lying. He doesn't know what he saw." "Interesting," Colt said, his phone still recording. "So, now you're calling a traumatized 8-year-old a liar." The older man held up his hands, trying to regain control of the situation. "Look, maybe we all need to calm down. This is just a misunderstanding. We're simply here to deliver official documents regarding the property. Mrs. Chen has been notified multiple times about the outstanding balance." "How much?" Marcus asked. The older man blinked. "Excuse me? How much does she owe?" Marcus repeated, his voice still that same dangerous calm. The older man glanced down at his clipboard. "The total outstanding balance is $8,347. That includes the original property tax increase, late fees, administrative costs, and you thought the best way to collect was to show up at her house, threaten her grandson, push her down, and leave her bleeding on her own porch. We didn't push. You did," a new voice said. Everyone turned. An elderly man stood in the yard of the house next door, leaning on the chain-link fence that separated the properties. He was in his 80s at least, wearing suspenders over a plaid shirt, his white hair thin but neatly combed. "I saw the whole thing," he said, his voice quavering but firm. "I was watering my roses. I saw these two drive up in that fancy car. Saw them bang on Evelyn's door. Saw her come out. Heard them yelling. And I saw that one," he pointed a gnarled finger at the younger man, "shove her hard. She never had a chance." Another voice joined from across the street. "I saw it too." A middle-aged woman stood on her porch, her arms crossed. "I was getting my mail. I saw everything. I already called the police 10 minutes ago. They should be here any second." The two men exchanged panicked glances. "That's you people don't understand how this works," the older man stammered. "We have legal authority. We're representatives of Burke Property Management." Colt read off his phone screen, where he'd already pulled up the information. "A company with 17 complaints filed against it for harassment, intimidation, and fraudulent collection practices. Your boss, Martin Burke, is currently under investigation by the State Attorney General's office for illegal eviction practices." The color drained from both men's faces. "How did you?" the younger man started. "I know how to use Google," Colt said dryly. "Amazing what 5 minutes of searching can find." Marcus took another step forward. He was close enough now that the younger man had to look up to meet his eyes. "Here's what's going to happen," Marcus said quietly. "You're going to back away from this woman. You're going to get off this porch. You're going to get in your car, and you're going to leave. Right now. We're not going anywhere," the younger man said, but his voice cracked. "You can't intimidate us. We know the law. Do you?" Dutch's voice rumbled from behind them. The men spun around to find Dutch standing at his full height, all 6'4" and 250 pounds of him. He'd finished tending to the grandmother, and now stood between her and the two men, his arms crossed over his massive chest. "Because I'm pretty sure the law doesn't allow you to assault senior citizens," Dutch continued, his voice still gentle but carrying unmistakable menace, "or threaten to kidnap children, or trespass after being asked to leave. But hey, I'm just a dumb construction worker. What do I know?" The younger man's bravado was crumbling visibly. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His eyes darted between the four bikers, looking for an escape route. That's when they heard it. Sirens. Distant at first, but growing louder. The older man made a desperate attempt to salvage the situation. Listen, when the police get here, we're going to tell them exactly what happened. You people assaulted us, threatened us. With what? Reese spoke up for the first time, his voice cheerful but edged with steel. We haven't touched you, haven't raised our voices. We're just standing here, protecting an injured woman and a frightened child. For concerned citizens, making sure nothing else happens to them. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. But please, tell the cops we assaulted you. I'm sure they'll be very interested in that story. Especially after they see Colt's video. The sirens were close now. 2 police cruisers turned onto Maple Street, lights flashing. The younger man's nerve finally broke completely. We're leaving, he said quickly, grabbing the older man's arm. Come on, let's go. But the paperwork, the older man protested weakly. Forget the paperwork. The younger man was already moving toward the steps. Marcus didn't move aside. He stood there, blocking their path, for just a moment. Longer. Long enough to make them wait. Long enough to make them remember. Then he stepped aside. The 2 men practically ran down the steps, tripping over each other in their haste. They scrambled into a black sedan parked at the curb, doors slamming, engine starting with a roar. They peeled away from the curb just as the police cruisers pulled up. 2 officers stepped out of the first cruiser. The first was a young Hispanic officer, probably in his late 20s, with sharp eyes and a crisp uniform. The second was older, a black officer in his 50s with silver hair and the weathered look of someone who'd seen it all. The older officer's eyes swept the scene, the injured grandmother, the scattered belongings, the 4 bikers standing protective watch, and his expression shifted from alert to understanding. Marcus Daniels, he said, a hint of warmth entering his voice. Should have known you'd be in the middle of this. Marcus turned, and for the first time that morning, a slight smile touched his face. Sergeant Hayes. Been a while. Sergeant David Hayes climbed the porch steps, extending his hand. Marcus shook it firmly. 3 years, Hayes said. Not since the charity ride for fallen officers. You still organizing that? Every year, Marcus replied. September 15th. The younger officer looked confused, glancing between his sergeant and the biker. Hayes caught the look and explained. Marcus, here is one of the good ones. Rodriguez. His brotherhood has raised over $200,000 for police and fire department charities over the years. They also volunteer at the Veterans Center every Thanksgiving. Rodriguez's eyebrows rose. Oh, I didn't know. Most people don't, Hayes said. He turned his attention to the grandmother, who was still sitting against the railing, Dutch's bandana pressed to her forehead. Ma'am, I'm Sergeant Hayes. Can you tell me what happened here? Before the grandmother could speak, Toby stepped forward. They hurt my grandma, he said, his voice small but determined. The men in the black car. They pushed her down. I saw it. And Mr. Marcus and his friends helped us. Hayes knelt down to Toby's level. Is that right? And what's your name, young man? Toby. Toby Chen. Okay, Toby. You did good calling for help. Hayes looked at Marcus. I'm guessing there's more to this story? Colt stepped forward, holding up his phone. I've got video, Sergeant. Shows the 2 men from Burke Property Management standing over Mrs. Chen while she was injured. Caught them threatening to take the boy away, destroying property, and generally being pieces of, he glanced at Toby. Being very unprofessional. Burke Property Management, Hayes repeated, his jaw tightening. We've gotten a lot of calls about them lately. They're running a scam, buying up properties for unpaid taxes, then harassing residents to force them out so they can flip the houses for profit. He looked at the grandmother. Mrs. Chen, is that what this is about? Property taxes? The grandmother Evelyn Chen, Marcus now knew nodded weakly. They said I owe over $8,000. But I've been paying my taxes. I have receipts. I can show you. I believe you, Hayes said gently. These companies manufacture debt, add fake fees, claim payments were never received, forge documents. It's fraud, plain and simple. We're building a case, but it takes time. She doesn't have time, Dutch rumbled. They said she had 72 hours before they'd evict her. Hayes stood, his expression grim. They can't legally evict anyone. Only a court can do that, and it requires proper notice and procedure. What they're doing is illegal intimidation. He pulled out his radio. Rodriguez, call for an ambulance. Mrs. Chin needs medical attention, and I want an APB out on that black sedan. I've got the plate number. As Rodriguez moved to his cruiser to make the calls, Hayes turned to Marcus. Tell me everything, he said. So, Marcus did. He explained how Toby had run to them in the park, terrified and desperate. How they'd found Evelyn injured and bleeding while two men stood over her making threats. How the neighbors had witnessed the assault. How the men had fled when the police arrived. Hayes listened, taking notes, his expression growing darker with each detail. You did the right thing, he said when Marcus finished. All of you. God knows what would have happened if that boy hadn't found you. He's a brave kid, Marcus said, glancing at Toby, who was now sitting on the porch steps next to his grandmother, holding her uninjured hand. An ambulance arrived, and paramedics hurried to check on Evelyn. After a quick assessment, they determined she needed to go to the hospital. Possible concussion. Definitely needed stitches on the forehead wound, and her wrist needed x-rays. No, Evelyn protested weakly. I can't afford the hospital, and I can't leave Toby alone. I'm all he has. Ma'am, you need medical attention, the lead paramedic said firmly but kindly. Toby's face crumpled with fear. Grandma, please don't leave me. Marcus knelt down in front of both of them. Mrs. Chin, you need to let them take care of you. As for Toby, he looked at the boy. How would you like to ride in my truck? We'll follow the ambulance to the hospital. Stay with your grandma the whole time. Evelyn looked at this stranger, this rough, intimidating biker who'd appeared out of nowhere to help them, and tears spilled down her cheeks. Why? She whispered. Why are you doing this? You don't even know us. Marcus was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft, carrying decades of pain. Because a long time ago, someone I loved needed help, and I wasn't there. And I've spent every day since then trying to make sure nobody else feels that kind of helpless. He stood, addressing his brothers. Dutch, Colt, Reese, I'm taking Toby to the hospital with his grandmother. Can you stay here? Make sure nobody comes back? Maybe help clean up this mess? Done, Dutch said immediately. I'll contact the Veterans Legal Aid Office, Colt added. Get Mrs. Chin a lawyer, pro bono. And I'll make some calls, Reese said. See what we can do about that debt. Sergeant Hayes stepped forward. I'll have a patrol car sit on the house for the next few days. Make sure nobody bothers it. And I'll personally deliver the assault charges to Burke Property Management. With the video evidence and witness statements, those two idiots are looking at criminal charges. Evelyn was sobbing now, overwhelmed. I can't afford all of this. You're not paying for anything, Marcus said firmly. That's not how this works. But I don't understand, Evelyn said through her tears. Why would you help us? We're strangers. Marcus glanced at Toby, then back at Evelyn. No, he said quietly. You're not. The emergency room at Riverside Community Hospital was busy for a Saturday afternoon. Families, with sick children, an elderly man clutching his chest, a construction worker with a bandaged hand. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in that particular shade of institutional white that made everything feel surreal. Marcus sat in the waiting room with Toby, who hadn't let go of his hand since they'd arrived. The boy's grip was tight, desperate, as if Marcus might disappear if he loosened it even a little. They'd been there for 2 hours. Evelyn was still being examined. X-rays, CT scan for the possible concussion, stitches for the forehead wound. The doctors had assured them she'd be fine, but Toby wouldn't relax until he saw her with his own eyes. Marcus bought him a hot chocolate from the vending machine. Toby took it but barely drank any, too anxious to stomach it. She's gonna be okay, Marcus said gently. The doctors are good here. They're taking care of her. Toby nodded but didn't speak. His eyes were fixed on the double doors where they'd taken his grandmother. After a long silence, the boy spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. My mom and dad died in a hospital. Marcus's chest tightened. I know, buddy. I'm sorry. It was a car crash. A truck ran a red light, hit them on the driver's side. Toby's voice was mechanical, reciting facts to keep the emotion at bay. Mom died right away. Dad lived for 3 days. I got to say goodbye, but he couldn't talk. Just looked at me. That must have been really hard, Marcus said quietly. Grandma came and got me. Moved me into her house. She sold most of her stuff to pay for the funeral. Then she sold her car so she could pay for my school supplies and clothes. Toby looked up at Marcus, his eyes red. She's always taking care of me, always making sure I'm okay. But nobody takes care of her. And now she's hurt because of those bad men. She's hurt because those men made a choice to hurt her. Marcus corrected gently. That's not your fault. And it's not hers. Some people in this world are just, he searched for the right words, just broken. They do bad things. But that doesn't mean everyone does. Are you broken? Toby asked suddenly. The question caught Marcus off guard. He studied the boy's face open, honest, searching for truth. Yeah, Marcus admitted finally. I think maybe I am. A little bit. What broke you? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. He'd never talked about this with anyone except his brothers. And even then, only once, years ago, around a campfire on a mountain road, when the whiskey had loosened all their tongues. But something about this kid, this brave, scared, honest kid made him want to answer. I had a sister, Marcus said slowly. Her name was Sarah. She was younger than me by 4 years. When we were kids, I used to protect her from bullies at school, made sure nobody messed with her. He smiled faintly at the memory. She called me her guardian angel. What happened to her? Toby asked. She grew up, got married to a guy named Rick. Seemed nice at first, but after a while, he changed, started drinking, got mean, started hitting her. Toby's eyes widened. I didn't know. Marcus continued, his voice rough. She hid it from me, hid it from everyone. I was in the Marines, stationed overseas. I'd call her every couple weeks, and she'd always say everything was fine. Always sounded happy. He paused, swallowing hard. Then one night, I got a call from my nephew or son, Danny. He was 12. Same age as you, actually. He was crying so hard I could barely understand him. Said his dad had hurt his mom really bad. Said she was in the hospital. Said he was scared. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. I tried to get emergency leave, but it took 3 days. By the time I got home, Sarah was out of the hospital, moved into a shelter with Danny. Rick was arrested, but he made bail, and 2 weeks later, his voice broke slightly. 2 weeks later, he found them, broke into the shelter, hurt Sarah again, beat her so bad she was in a coma for a month. Did she wake up? Toby whispered. Yeah, she woke up, but she was different. Brain damage from the beating. She couldn't walk right anymore. Couldn't talk without slurring. Couldn't work. Marcus's voice was barely above a whisper now. She lived another 8 years like that. In pain, frustrated, angry at the world. And I watched her suffer every single day, knowing I should have protected her. Knowing I should have seen the signs. Should have been there. It wasn't your fault, Toby said quietly. Marcus looked at him, surprised. You didn't know, Toby continued. You were far away, and she hid it from you. How could you know if she didn't tell you? Out of the mouths of babes, Marcus thought. How many therapists had told him the same thing? How many years had he carried that guilt? And here was an 8-year-old kid cutting right through to the truth. You're a smart kid, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. My mom used to say that, Toby said. She said I was smart like my dad. He was a teacher, English teacher at the high school. Yeah? What did your mom do? She was a nurse. She worked here, actually. At this hospital. Toby looked around the waiting room with a sad smile. She used to bring me here sometimes, when she worked night shifts and Grandma couldn't watch me. I'd sit in the break room and do my homework while she checked on patients. Marcus felt that familiar ache in his chest. Good people, decent people, taken too soon by bad luck and someone else's recklessness. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So, if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. What about your nephew? Toby asked. Danny, what happened to him? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. This was the part he never talked about. The part that still woke him up at night, gasping, reaching for something he could never get back. Danny had a hard time after what happened to his mom. He was angry, really angry. Started getting in fights at school, drinking, using drugs. I tried to help, took him in when Sarah couldn't handle him anymore. Tried to get him into programs, counseling, therapy, but he was so angry at the world. Marcus's voice cracked. When he was 24, he took his own life. Overdose. Left a note saying he was tired of being broken, tired of remembering, just tired. Toby's hand tightened on Marcus's. I'm sorry, the boy whispered. Me too, kid. Me too. They sat in silence for a while. Two broken people holding on to each other in a hospital waiting room, finding comfort in shared grief. Finally, Toby spoke again. Is that why you helped us? Because of Sarah and Danny? Partly, Marcus admitted, but also because it was the right thing to do. Because you're a brave kid who asked for help. And because nobody should have to face bad people alone. You're not broken, Toby said suddenly, looking up at Marcus with surprising certainty. You're just hurt. There's a difference. Marcus stared at this kid, this incredible, wise, brave kid, and felt something shift inside his chest. Something that had been frozen for a very long time, beginning to thaw. Yeah, he said softly. Maybe you're right. The double doors swung open, and a doctor in blue scrubs emerged. Family of Evelyn Chin. Marcus and Toby both stood, Toby's hand still gripping Marcus's. She's going to be fine, the doctor said with a warm smile. Mild concussion, sprained wrist, and we put 6 stitches in her forehead. She'll be sore for a few days, but no permanent damage. She's asking for her grandson. Toby's entire body sagged with relief. Can I see her? He asked desperately. Of course. Follow me. They walked through the double doors, down a hallway lined with examination rooms. The doctor led them to room 7 and pulled back the curtain. Evelyn lay in the hospital bed, her head bandaged, her wrist in a brace, but her eyes bright and alert. The moment she saw Toby, tears spilled down her cheeks. Grandma! Toby ran to her, carefully climbing onto the bed to hug her. Oh, my sweet boy. Evelyn sobbed, holding him close. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I'm so sorry. It's okay, Grandma. You're okay. That's all that matters. Evelyn looked over Toby's head at Marcus, who stood in the doorway, giving them space. You, she said, her voice breaking. You stayed. You brought him here. You. She couldn't finish, overwhelmed. Marcus stepped into the room, his expression gentle. Mrs. Chin, while you're here, my brothers are at your house. They're cleaning up, securing it, making sure nobody comes back. We've also contacted a lawyer, a good one, who works with veterans and people being taken advantage of by predatory companies. He's going to help you fight this debt. I can't afford a lawyer, Evelyn protested weakly. You're not paying, Marcus said firmly. It's pro bono, no charge. But why? Because you shouldn't have to. Marcus interrupted gently but firmly. Because what happened to you was wrong. Because Toby is a brave kid who deserves to feel safe in his own home. And because, he paused, because helping you helps me. Does that make sense? Evelyn studied his face, the lines, the scars, the pain that lived behind his eyes, and slowly nodded. Yes, she whispered. It does. By the time Marcus drove Evelyn and Toby back to Maple Street that evening, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. The air had cooled slightly, and the neighborhood was quiet except for the sound of crickets beginning their evening chorus. As they turned onto the street, Marcus's eyes widened slightly. The house at number 17 looked different. The scattered belongings had been collected and neatly arranged on the porch. The broken planters had been cleaned up, the dirt swept away. Someone had even replaced the shattered ceramic pots with new ones, already filled with fresh flowers. But that wasn't all. The front yard was full of people. Dutch and Reese were there, along with Colt. But they weren't alone. At least a dozen neighbors had gathered, the elderly man from next door, the woman from across the street, several others Marcus didn't recognize. Some were grilling hot dogs and hamburgers on a portable grill. Others had brought folding chairs and were sitting in a semicircle on the lawn. Children played in the grass. It looked like a block party. What? Evelyn whispered from the passenger seat, staring in disbelief. Marcus parked the truck and helped Evelyn out carefully, Toby staying close to her side. As they approached the house, Dutch spotted them and waved, a huge grin splitting his bearded face. "There they are," he called out. The gathered neighbors turned, and a cheer went up. People clapped. Someone whistled. Evelyn looked overwhelmed, tears streaming down her face again. An elderly woman approached, gray-haired, maybe 80, wearing a flowered apron over her dress. She took Evelyn's hands gently. "Evelyn, dear, we're so sorry about what happened. We should have done more sooner. But we're here now." "Mrs. Patterson," Evelyn whispered. "You didn't have to." "Nonsense," Mrs. Patterson said firmly. "You've lived on this street for 30 years. You watched our children grow up. You brought meals when people were sick. You never asked for anything in return. Well, now it's our turn." The man from next door who'd witnessed the assault stepped forward. "We took up a collection," he said, handing Evelyn an envelope. "It's not everything, but it's a start." Evelyn opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were checks and cash. She counted quickly, her eyes widening. This is $4,000. She breathed. 4,237. Actually, Colt corrected from where he stood near the porch. "We hit up everyone on the street, plus some of the local businesses." Word spread fast about what happened. "I can't accept this," Evelyn protested. "This is too much." "You can and you will," Mrs. Patterson said firmly. "Because that's what community means. We take care of each other." Reese stepped forward, holding out a folder. "Also, good news on the legal front. The lawyer went through all your tax records. Turns out Burke Property Management has been committing fraud. They filed false documents, claiming you hadn't paid when your receipts prove you had. It's a clear-cut case. He's filing charges on Monday." And, Colt added, Sergeant Hayes called. "The 2 men who came here this morning have been arrested. Assault, criminal trespass, attempted extortion, and fraud. They're looking at serious jail time. Plus, the State Attorney General's office just opened a full investigation into Burke Property Management. Apparently, your case was the final straw. They've been targeting elderly homeowners all over the Fontalfino County." Evelyn swayed slightly, and Marcus steadied her with a gentle hand on her elbow. "Are you telling me," she started, her voice trembling, "are you telling me this is over? The criminal part?" "Yeah, pretty much," Marcus said. "The civil part will take some time getting back overpayments, making sure the tax records are corrected. But you're not losing your house. You're not losing Toby. You're safe." Evelyn collapsed against Marcus, sobbing. Not from fear this time, but from relief, from overwhelming gratitude, from the sudden release of months, maybe years of crushing stress. Marcus held her awkwardly, patting her back the way his own mother used to when he was a child. "It's okay," he murmured. "It's over. You're okay." Toby wrapped his arms around both of them, and for a moment, the 3 of them stood there, strangers 12 hours ago, now bound together by crisis and compassion. Dutch cleared his throat. "All right, enough crying. Who wants a burger? I'm starving." The moment broke with laughter. People moved toward the grill. Paper plates were distributed. Someone turned on a radio, and classic rock drifted across the lawn. Evelyn was guided to a comfortable chair, Toby settling on the grass beside her, and neighbors took turns coming over to check on her, offer condolences, share stories. Marcus stepped away from the crowd, needing a moment. He walked to his bike, leaning against it, watching the scene with something like wonder. Dutch joined him, handing him a beer. "Hell of a day," Dutch said. "Yeah," Marcus agreed. "You okay?" Marcus took a long drink, considering the question. Was he okay? He'd woken up this morning planning a simple ride with his brothers. Had been drinking coffee in a park when a scared kid changed everything. And now here he was, surrounded by strangers who'd become a temporary community, watching an old woman and a young boy laugh for the first time in probably months. "Yeah," Marcus said finally. "I think I am." Dutch nodded, understanding. "The kid got to you. It wasn't a question. He reminds me of Danny," Marcus admitted. "Same age, same scared eyes, same desperate need to protect someone he loves. But this time, you got there in time," Dutch said quietly. Marcus looked at his friend, his brother, and nodded slowly. "Yeah, This time I did. They stood in comfortable silence, watching as Toby ran across the lawn with some neighborhood kids, his laughter bright and free. Watching as Evelyn smiled, really smiled, surrounded by people who cared. Colt and Reese joined them, each grabbing a beer from the cooler Dutch had brought. "So," Reese said. "What now?" "What do you mean?" Marcus asked. "I mean, are we just going to ride off into the sunset and hope everything works out? Or are we going to make sure?" Marcus looked at his youngest brother, saw the determination there, and smiled slightly. "What did you have in mind?" Reese grinned. "Well, I was thinking. The house needs work, new roof, paint. Porch needs reinforcing. We've got the skills. We've got the time. And I bet if we put the word out to the Brotherhood, the whole chapter, not just us, we could get this place fixed up in a weekend." "A work party," Colt said thoughtfully. "I like it. Plus," Reese continued, "I talked to my buddy who runs the community center. They've got programs for kids who've lost parents, grief, counseling, mentorship, activities. Toby should be in something like that. And Evelyn," Dutch added. "She's been carrying everything alone for too long. There's support groups, senior services, resources she probably doesn't even know about." Marcus looked at his brothers, these men who'd become his family when his blood family fell apart. These men who'd ridden beside him through everything, who understood that helping strangers wasn't weakness. It was the whole point. "All right," he said. "Let's do it. All of it." The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. True to Reese's word, the Steel Ridge Brotherhood mobilized. 15 bikers showed up the following Saturday, trucks loaded with tools, materials, and enough food to feed a small army. They replaced the roof in 2 days, Dutch directing operations from the ground, his construction experience invaluable. Younger members climbed ladders, hauled shingles, worked with the kind of coordinated efficiency that only comes from men who trust each other completely. The house was repainted, fresh blue, brighter than before, with crisp white trim. Evelyn cried when she saw it. The porch was reinforced, new railings installed. The front yard was landscaped, with new flowers planted and the grass reseeded. Someone even built a small garden bed where Evelyn could grow vegetables. Inside, walls were patched, leaky faucets fixed, the old furnace serviced. One of the brothers, an electrician by trade, rewired several outlets that had been fire hazards. Neighbors pitched in too. Mrs. Patterson organized meals. The elderly man next, door his name was George, helped with painting. Even some of the kids on the block got involved, pulling weeds and sweeping sidewalks. Toby was everywhere, helping wherever he could, his face bright with excitement. He carried tools, fetched water, held ladders steady. The bikers treated him like their mascot, teaching him how to use a level, how to measure cuts, how to check if something was plumb. Marcus found himself spending hours with the kid, answering endless questions, teaching him things his father would have taught him if he'd lived. "Why did you become a biker?" Toby asked one afternoon, sitting on the porch steps while Marcus sanded the railing. "I needed to feel free," Marcus answered honestly. "After the Marines, after everything with my sister, I felt trapped. Trapped by memories, trapped by guilt. But when I got on a bike, none of that mattered. It was just me, the road, and the wind. Pure freedom." "Do you still feel trapped?" Marcus paused, considering. 2 weeks ago, the answer would have been yes. "But now, less than I used to," he admitted. Meanwhile, Evelyn was connecting with resources. Colt had found her a social worker who specialized in helping seniors navigate benefits and services. She'd been approved for property tax relief, a program she hadn't known existed. Her medical bills from the hospital visit were covered by emergency assistance funds. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Chin, no relation, had filed a lawsuit against Burke Property Management. The evidence was overwhelming. The company was settling out of court, refunding all fraudulent charges plus damages. Evelyn would receive almost $15,000. More importantly, the state attorney general had shut Burke Property Management down completely. Martin Burke and his associates were facing criminal charges. The 2 men who'd assaulted Evelyn were awaiting trial. Justice, slow but certain, was coming. One evening, as the sun set over Maple Street, casting everything in golden light, Marcus stood in Evelyn's backyard with Dutch, surveying their work. The yard looked transformed. The grass was green. The fence was mended. A small patio area had been created with pavers, perfect for morning coffee. "Not bad," Dutch said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Not bad at all," Marcus agreed. Evelyn appeared in the back door, holding a tray with lemonade and cookies. "You boys hungry?" she called. "Always." Dutch laughed. They sat on the new patio, drinking lemonade while the crickets began their evening song. Toby joined them, dirt-streaked and happy, collapsing onto a chair with a dramatic sigh. "I'm exhausted," he announced. "Good exhausted or bad exhausted?" Evelyn asked, ruffling his hair. "Good exhausted. The best kind." Marcus smiled, watching them. This, he thought, this is what it's about. Not the bikes. Not the brotherhood, even. But this helping someone rebuild. Giving them hope. Making the world a little less broken. One person at a time. "Marcus," Evelyn said quietly, "I don't know how to thank you. For everything. You and your friends. You've given us our lives back." "You don't need to thank me," Marcus said. "Seeing you two happy, that's thanks enough." "But I want to do something," Evelyn insisted. "To pay you back somehow." Marcus shook his head. "It doesn't work like that. You don't pay back kindness. You pass it forward. When you see someone who needs help, you help them. That's how you thank me." Toby looked up at Marcus with those serious eyes. "I'm gonna help people when I grow up," he declared. "Just like you." "You already do, kid," Marcus said. "You ran for help when your grandma needed it. That took courage. That was helping. Can I join your motorcycle club when I'm older?" Marcus laughed. "Tell you what, when you turn 18, if you still want to, we'll talk about it. Promise?" "Promise." 3 weeks after that Saturday morning in the park, the Steel Ridge Brotherhood organized a community barbecue at Red Oak Park. It was a thank you to everyone who'd helped the neighbors, the local businesses, the police, the hospital staff. An open invitation to anyone who wanted to come. The turnout was incredible. Families spread blankets on the grass. Kids played on the playground. A local band set up and played classic rock. Grills smoked with burgers and hot dogs. Coolers overflowed with drinks. And in the center of it all, parked in that same spot under the oak trees, sat the motorcycles of the Steel Ridge Brotherhood. Marcus stood near his bike, greeting people, shaking hands, accepting thanks he didn't think he deserved. Dutch was manning one of the grills, his loud laugh carrying across the park. Colt had organized games for the kids. Reese was teaching some teenagers how to throw a football properly. Sergeant Hayes showed up with his family, a wife, 2 teenage daughters, and a young son. He found Marcus and shook his hand warmly. "Wanted to thank you again," Hayes said. "What you did for Mrs. Chin, for Toby, that was above and beyond." "We just did what anyone should have done," Marcus replied. "But most people don't," Hayes countered. "Most people walk away. Mind their own business. You didn't. And because of that, we were able to build a case that shut down a predatory company that was hurting a lot of people. The 2 men who assaulted her. Trial set for next month. With the video evidence, witness statements, and their prior records, the DA expects conviction. They're looking at 3 to 5 years. "Good," Marcus said with satisfaction. As the afternoon wore on, the crowd grew. Somewhere around 200 people filled the park, a mixture of neighbors from Maple Street, other people the Brotherhood had helped over the years, veterans from the center, police officers, firefighters, and curious locals who'd heard about what happened and wanted to show support. Mrs. Patterson had organized a bake sale, with proceeds going to a fund for seniors facing housing issues. George was collecting signatures for a petition to increase oversight of property management companies. The community, awakened by what had almost happened to one of their own, was mobilizing. And in the middle of it all, Evelyn and Toby. Evelyn moved through the crowd like a celebrity, accepting hugs, thanking people, her face glowing with joy. She'd gained weight in the past few weeks, the stress that had been eating away at her finally lifting. Her hair was freshly done. She wore a pretty sundress instead of her old house clothes. She looked 10 years younger. But it was Toby who'd transformed the most. The scared, desperate boy who'd run crying to a group of bikers was gone. In his place was a confident kid with a ready smile, darting between groups of people, helping set up tables, handing out drinks, laughing with other children. He wore a new t-shirt black, with the Steel Ridge Brotherhood logo on the front and honorary member on the back. Dutch had given it to him last week, and Toby had barely taken it off since. As the sun began to set, Marcus found himself standing alone for a moment, watching the scene. Dutch appeared beside him, 2 beers in hand. He passed one to Marcus. "Hell of a turnout," Dutch observed. "Yeah," Marcus agreed. "You did good, brother." Marcus shook his head. "We did good. All of us. But it started with you," Dutch insisted. "That kid could have run to anyone. But he ran to you. And you didn't turn away." "How could I?" Marcus asked quietly. Before Dutch could answer, they heard a commotion near the stage area. The band had stopped playing. Someone was speaking into a microphone. It was Evelyn. She stood on the small platform, microphone in hand, Toby beside her. The crowd quieted, people turning to listen. "I'm not very good at speeches," Evelyn began, her voice shaking slightly. "But I wanted to say something. 3 weeks ago, 2 men came to my house and tried to take everything from me. My home, my dignity, my grandson." The crowd was silent, listening. "I was terrified," Evelyn continued. "I thought that was it, that I'd lost, that there was no hope, and then—" she looked across the crowd until her eyes found Marcus. "Then my brave grandson ran for help. And he found it, in the last place I would have expected." Marcus shifted uncomfortably as people turned to look at him. "Marcus Daniels and the Steel Ridge Brotherhood didn't know me," Evelyn said, her voice growing stronger. "Didn't owe me anything. But when Toby asked for help, they came. They stood up to those men. They got me medical care. They contacted lawyers. They fixed my house. They brought this community together. They gave me my life back." Tears streamed down her face, but she was smiling. "And they taught me something important, that kindness still exists, that heroes are real, and that sometimes they wear leather jackets and ride motorcycles." The crowd erupted in applause. People whistled and cheered. Marcus felt his throat tighten, his eyes stinging. Dutch clapped him on the shoulder. "Go on," Dutch said quietly. "They're waiting for you." Marcus made his way through the crowd, people patting his back, shaking his hand, thanking him. When he reached the stage, Toby ran to him and threw his arms around his waist. Marcus hugged him back. This kid who'd somehow become so important to him in such a short time. Evelyn handed him the microphone. Marcus looked out at the crowd, 200 faces looking back at him expectantly. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. Then he thought about Sarah, about Danny, about all the pain and loss and guilt he'd carried for so many years. And about how this one moment, this one choice to help when a scared kid asked for it had somehow begun to heal wounds he'd thought would never close. "I'm not a hero," Marcus said into the microphone, his voice rough. "I'm just a guy who made a choice. The choice to help when someone asked. The choice not to walk away." He paused, looking down at Toby, then back at the crowd. "We live in a world where it's easy to mind your own business, to pretend you don't see someone struggling, to tell yourself it's not your problem. But I learned something a long time ago, the hard way. We're all connected. When one person suffers, we all suffer. When one person needs help and doesn't get it, we all lose something." His voice grew stronger. What happened to Mrs. Chin could have ended differently. Could have ended with her losing her home, with Toby being taken away, with those criminals winning. But it didn't. Because a brave kid asked for help, and because a community came together. He gestured to the crowd. "All of you. The neighbors who witnessed what happened. The police who responded. The lawyer who took the case. The people who donated money. The volunteers who helped rebuild. You're the real heroes. You're the ones who prove that good people still exist. That compassion still matters. That we can still look out for each other." The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. "The Steel Ridge Brotherhood has a motto," Marcus continued. "It's not complicated, not fancy, just 3 words. Ride, protect, serve." He looked at his brothers, standing together near the stage. "We ride because we love freedom. We protect because we know what it's like to lose people we love. And we serve because giving back is the only way to heal." His voice cracked slightly. For years, I've been trying to make up for the times I wasn't there when someone needed me, for the people I couldn't save, and I thought I'd never be able to. That the guilt would always be there. He looked down at Toby again. But this kid, this brave, incredible kid, he gave me something I didn't think I could have. He gave me a chance to be there, to make a difference, to save someone. Marcus's eyes were wet now, but he didn't care. So thank you, Toby. Thank you, Mrs. Chen. You didn't just accept help. You gave me something more valuable than I can ever repay. You gave me peace. The crowd erupted again, but this time the applause was different. Deeper, more emotional. Evelyn was crying openly now. She hugged Marcus tightly, this stranger who'd become family. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for being there when we needed you most. Thank you for letting me, Marcus replied. 2 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, Marcus rode past Maple Street again. He'd made it a habit checking in every couple weeks, making sure everything was still okay, making sure Evelyn and Toby were doing all right. The street looked different now. The houses seemed brighter somehow. More people were outside working in yards, talking over fences, watching their children play. The community that had been awakened by crisis had stayed awake, staying connected. Number 17 looked beautiful. The fresh paint gleamed in the morning sun. The landscaping was lush and green. Wind chimes hung from the porch, tinkling gently in the breeze. And there, sitting on the front steps, were Evelyn and Toby. Evelyn was knitting something, a scarf, maybe. Toby sat beside her with a book, reading aloud while she worked. It was a scene of perfect, ordinary peace. They looked up when they heard the motorcycle. Toby's face split into a huge grin. He jumped up and ran to the curb, waving wildly. Marcus pulled over, cutting the engine. He pulled off his helmet and smiled. Hey, kid, what are you reading? To Kill a Mockingbird, Toby said proudly. For school. It's about a lawyer who defends an innocent man even though everyone's against him. Good book, Marcus said. Important book. It reminds me of you, Toby said seriously. Atticus Finch. He stands up for what's right even when it's hard. Just like you did for us. Marcus felt that familiar tightness in his chest, the good kind this time. How's your grandma? She's great. She joined a cooking class at the senior center. And she's volunteering at the library twice a week. And guess what? She has a boyfriend. Marcus's eyebrows rose. A boyfriend? Evelyn had joined them now, laughing, her cheeks pink. It's not serious, George from next door. We play cards together. That's all. That's not what George says, Toby teased. Marcus grinned. Good for you, Mrs. Chen. How are you, Marcus? Evelyn asked. We haven't seen you in 2 weeks. Been busy. We did a charity ride for the Children's Hospital. Raised $18,000. That's wonderful, Evelyn said warmly. Then, more quietly, I think about that day a lot. What would have happened if Toby hadn't found you? If you hadn't helped? Don't think about that, Marcus said gently. Think about what did happen. Think about how brave Toby was. How strong you were. How the community came together. Still, Evelyn said, you changed our lives. Both of you. She looked at Toby. I'll never forget that. Neither will I, Toby said seriously. Then his face brightened. Hey, Marcus? The school is doing a career day next month. Can you come talk about being in the military? And about the motorcycle club? You want me to talk to your class? Yeah. I told everyone about you. About how you helped us. They want to meet you. Marcus looked at this kid, this brave, resilient, incredible kid, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Pride. Not in himself, but in Toby. In what he'd become. In the future he'd have. Sure, Marcus said. I'll be there. Toby pumped his fist in victory. Yes. This is going to be so cool. Evelyn smiled warmly at Marcus. You're good with him. You should have kids of your own. Maybe someday, Marcus said. But he was thinking that maybe he already did, in a way. Not biological, but family nonetheless. Will you stay for coffee? Evelyn asked. I just made cinnamon rolls. Marcus glanced at his watch. He'd planned to meet the Brotherhood for breakfast. But, yeah, he said. Coffee sounds good. They walked up to the house together, Evelyn, Toby, and Marcus. An unlikely family, brought together by crisis, held together by compassion. As Marcus sat on the porch, drinking coffee and eating warm cinnamon rolls while Toby chattered excitedly about school and Evelyn told stories about the neighborhood, he felt something settle in his chest. Peace. Real, genuine peace. For years, he'd been haunted by the people he couldn't save. Sarah, Danny, all the others who'd slipped through his fingers despite his best efforts. But here, on this porch, with this woman and this boy, he'd finally done it. He'd been there when it mattered. He'd made a difference. He'd saved someone. And in saving them, he'd saved himself. Marcus finished his coffee and stood, stretching. The sun was fully up now, the day warming. He needed to get going. His brothers were waiting. Toby walked him to his bike, his hand slipping into Marcus's naturally, like it belonged there. "Marcus?" Toby said quietly as they reached the curb. "Yeah, kid? I'm glad I found you that day." In the park, Marcus knelt down so they were eye level. "Me too, Toby. Me too. You said I was brave, but I think you're the bravest person I know." Marcus's throat tightened. "Why's that?" "Because you were hurt and you still helped us. That takes real courage. To keep being kind even when the world was mean to you." Out of the mouths of babes, Marcus thought again. This kid saw right through to the heart of things. "You're gonna do great things, Toby," Marcus said, his voice rough with emotion. "I know it. Will you be there? To see them?" "Yeah, kid, I'll be there." They hugged this biker and this boy, two souls who'd found each other at exactly the right moment. Marcus mounted his bike, started the engine. As he put on his helmet, he looked back at the house one more time. Evelyn stood on the porch, hand over her heart, watching. Toby stood on the curb, waving. Marcus waved back. And as he rode away, the rumble of his engine fading into the distance, he felt lighter than he had in 15 years. The ghosts were still there. Sarah and Danny would always be part of him, but they weren't haunting him anymore. They were guiding him, showing him how to help others, how to be there when someone needed it, how to turn pain into purpose. And maybe, just maybe, that was the point all along. Not to forget the people you've lost, but to honor them by saving the ones you can. Final CTA. Emotional call to action. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Because the world needs to remember that kindness still exists. That compassion matters. That heroes are real. They just might not look like you expect. Comment below and tell us, where are you watching from? Have you ever helped a stranger in need? Do you believe in the power of community? Drop it in the comments if this story moved you. Tell us which moment hit you the hardest. Because stories like this remind us of something important. Heroes don't always come from fairy tales. Sometimes they come from the open road. And they save a little boy who just needed someone to believe him. Someone to stand up when everyone else walked away. Someone to prove that good people still exist. The Steel Ridge Brotherhood rides for freedom, but they stop for those who need them. And that makes all the difference. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.